Cool. We're going to go ahead and kick off. So I want to welcome our two panelists. We have Misagh Jobeli, who is a business intelligence architect at Inhabit IQ, and Darren Downing, who serves the company as CIO. Gentlemen, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, very good to meet everyone. Glad you were able to join us. Again, my name is Darren Downing. I am the CIO at Inhabit IQ. I've been with the company since inception, and basically Inhabit IQ is the parent company to nearly 40 other companies or brands, we call them brands internally, that serve both the short and long-term property management spaces. So short-term being like vacation or rentals, and long-term being apartments, business leases, commercial properties, et cetera. When we acquire a company, they become part of us, and that means all bits of it. So we are looking to ingest, if you will, all of their data, both at the operational level for functional, just to serve the business, as well as at the informational level in terms of understanding their metrics and being able to make better decisions. We are in the United States primarily, but we have brands in Canada and the UK. We have customers all over the world. I think that sums up who we are rather well. Can we move on to the next slide? All right. I would like to say that we are largely, if not completely, SaaS-based, and our brands cover various different aspects of property and vacation rental management, from the actual CRM that manages the properties to channel management, document management, forms management, screening or security, and a number of other areas like that. And then underlying all of that is payment processing. That's a lot of different verticals, a lot of different data. And ultimately that number has approached or will soon exceed 100 systems that we're pulling data from. In our previous modality, it was all very manual, very labor intensive, where we would, at the worst case scenario, have to log into a website and set up a bunch of parameters in a user interface and pull down a CSV. To best case, which was only, I think, 2 different sources, we could connect directly to a database and pull it in. Otherwise, everything was hands-off and remote. We did have some brands that would push data to us, and others where we'd still have to go get it from some form of file drop. Obviously, that was overwhelming and very manual. And honestly, because of the human aspect of it, it was prone to a lot of error. In other words, somebody would be using a report that they had created for themselves to share data with us, and then they'd make changes for their own needs, and we would be getting different formatted data. It was very challenging to keep up with the data. So it would take the better part, 2 people, the better part of 3 weeks, certainly 2 weeks every month, sometimes as much as 3 weeks, which left us less than half the month to respond to additional requests for new reporting or changes to reports. And it was an unmanageable process, to say the least. Next slide. I would like to say that as it relates to the variability in data, because we were dependent on third parties to create this data for us, we didn't have an automated means. There was no mechanism for us to, A, be able to quickly tell that the data had changed, B, to be able to validate it. So those were just some big problems that occurred in the system. Also, understanding the data, making sure that we understood the data as it came in through this non-native format became a problem for us, because sometimes they would make assumptions to what they were exporting that we didn't follow or weren't aware of. Or, for example, they would transform data for us and we wouldn't know that they were doing that. So again, getting direct access to the systems became critical for us. Next slide. So we developed a new vision. Misagh brought a different perspective and helped us as he learned our struggles, said, we can do this better, we can do this different. And so we developed a vision where we removed the entire ETL process from the equation. We basically insisted on direct connections and automation through two very different tools, but that provided the same level of service, comparable levels of service, just different advantages, as well as better tools that let us visually both share the data real time and go through the transformation process and understand the variability in the data that they were giving us. So the vision was to separate this IT world, as it were, from the actual BI part of it, which was what, really honestly what we need to get to. All businesses really just, they want to get past the issues of getting the data and get to the issues of working the data. And so from there, I'm gonna let Misagh introduce himself and explain how he was able to execute the vision.
Thanks, Darren. Hello, everyone. I'm Misagh, and I'm a BI architect at Inhabit IQ. I joined the team about 6 months ago, and I had the opportunity to sit with the team and our business users to figure out what the current system is, what the challenges are, and where we want to be 6 months from now, which is today. As Darren said, the old way was really labor intensive and manual. They were prone to mistakes. Sometimes we didn't have the data by the time that we had to deliver. And so we were getting files from SFTP. We were linking to those systems through database links. We were getting email files. So the data was everywhere. And when we look at the challenges, we realize we have lots of data, but also we have data everywhere. There were 100 systems to extract data from. And so we had to find a way to be able to manage the variety of the systems we're trying to connect to. We were connecting to all sorts of relational databases, but also a lot of financial SaaS systems from QuickBooks, Xero, Zora, Great Plains, and all sorts of things. So we sat down and we came up with what we want the system to look like. We wanted to build the system to be very flexible. We did not want to be trapped in IT work. We wanted to be able to have a really quick development and delivery cycle and be very flexible with that. But how would you be flexible if you have to extract data from 100 systems to build your 100 to your data sources? We also knew that we had a really small team. We are a team of two, and my coworker is most of the time busy with the old process. So we knew that in terms of resources, we have to come up with a way that we're not sitting all day coding or we're trying to manage data flows all day long. And so we came up with the idea of the zero line. And this is originally published by Monica Rogati in 2017 in HackerNoon. So if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, you're saying that most of the activities are related to data engineering and IT focused. So this is basically creating the basic needs for your system. So it's your data pipelines, it's your data warehouse engine, and it's making sure the data is flowing right, is being cleaned right, is validated. So the focus is 100% IT. And in short, you need a solid foundation to be able to get to analytics where you meet the business and they are able to derive the benefit of this data to make decisions. So we came up with the idea of zero line. Now, why zero mark bench line? I don't know any COO in the world that comes to you and say, hey, I'm really impressed with your ETL complexity. All they care about is some timely and accurate data that they have confidence in using. And so we wanted to make sure we don't want to get trapped in the IT work. And we were going to use top of the line toolings that we can get in order to collect the data and be able to report on it as soon as possible. So many of you know the challenges of creating an enterprise data warehouse with the legacy systems. It takes a lot of cost, upfront cost, because you had to go create your own server. You had to have a huge team of, database administrators, cloud administrators, ETL engineers, report writers. So it was very inflexible to changes. You had huge bandwidth requirements if you were hitting new systems, big systems, and you could also cause problems for those systems. That's why they were like, hey, you can only extract data from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. from our system. So this is the list of everything we did not want to be. So we sat down and we came up with a list of the features that we thought is going to be very critical for us. If we check mark all five of these, we call it a success system. First, we wanted timely data. We wanted to go from extracting data from once a month to intraday. If we want to extract data 6 times a day, clean it, report on it, we should be able to. Second, we wanted accurate data, and that meant that we had to be in sync with all 100 systems. It sounds very easy, but I don't know that many data engineers or ETL engineers that can sync 100 systems and not to spend much time in the monitoring aspect of it. The third was data profiling. When I first joined, one of the challenges I had was the business users. They're like, how do you know if the data is correct? How is it not missing parts? So I knew that data profiling and keeping track of the quality of the data that is coming in is extremely important. The fourth thing is the data auditing. Because we were extracting data once a month, we never kept track of the historical changes on the systems. So for instance, if a reservation changed 4 or 5 times before I picked up that row, I don't know what was happening. And the data is going to be still next month when I'm picking up the data. So we were going to be kind of uh, between an operational data store and a data warehouse with the flattened tables that keeps track of histories. And last, we wanted to be available for reporting 24/7. We have over 100 systems and we get data from them all the time. Some come in the morning, some come in the afternoon. We did not have the privilege to say, hey, from 10 to 11 is our refresh time for the data warehouse. You cannot run reports. So we designed a way that we're using cloning tables. So the data that the user is reading is always accurate. And here's the fun part, how we put it all together. The chart goes from left to right. As you can see, we have a lot of 100 systems over there, lots of variety, a lot of relational sources, a lot of SaaS financial sources. Some of them are API endpoints. We still have the few that are sending us email files. There are systems that we had to write API calls to them with Azure functions and get data from them. And so we use both Fivetran and Stitch as our data pipelines to be able to replicate data within those systems and insert it in our Snowflake engine. We are mainly log-based replication. So what happens is that we enable logging for the tables, and we get the exact same table on our side. And then we sit with the brands programmers and get those SQL logic to be able to replicate the same logic on our side. Now, there are cases that the amount of data that we're trying to track is way too much, and or there were no resources on their side to actually help us do the development. So we, on those scenarios, we use key-based replications with the stage. And what that means is that we are able to replicate views on our side. So if you give me a view on your side, I would be able to pick that one up myself. And so all this data comes and lands inside the Snowflake's staging area. That's where we're using Trifactor to clean our data from staging, union it, wrangle it, and build our flattened table for analysis. So as you can see, with Fivetran on the stage and our data pipelines, we are mostly point and click, you know, we are connecting to their systems, we're picking the tables we want to replicate, and well, we have that. Another thing I want to point out is that we have really high regard for the security at Inhabit. So every single connection we have made with these two data pipelines have been either SSH, reverse SSH, or with VPN. So the data on its own is already, encrypted, but we add an extra layer to that as well. And on the right side are BI analytic tools. For now, we are trying to replicate the operational reports we have had with Power BI. But going forward, we are trying to go to a search-based analytic tool such as Tellius, which is kind of like your Siri, that you can talk to it. And so with that approach, we don't have to aggregate the data anymore. We give you the raw data set to the analyst, and they are able to slice and dice it on the fly. It also has algorithms that is running in the background, and it's going to find insight for you and tell you what changed, what metric changed, why it changed, and how to improve it. So the vision is right now to be able to automate everything that requires minimal monitoring. And the future it would be to make everybody in the company be a data analyst. So, in our system, we have a few features that I wanted to point out. The first thing was that API listeners. So there are companies that there are no SQL, there was no connector for them, but they also didn't have an API endpoint. So what happened was that we sat down with the developer and we implemented a mechanism for them to send us data to our API endpoint in Stitch. Now, there were cases that they also had API endpoints. So we were able to use Fivetran and Azure Functions, and we were able to make API calls to their system to extract data on a daily basis. Now, I want to talk about the zero downtime and how we were able to achieve that between Snowflake and Trifactor. So when we are wrangling data, our scheduled data flows, they don't write into the production table. We have two sets of production table. One is a clone and one is a clone that our Trifactor is writing to. The other sets of tables are tables that are being read by the reporting tools, such as Power BI and hopefully in the future, Tellius. So all our development, data flow running in the morning and afternoon inserts to the clone table. And then we have processes and tasks that run after the flow that retire old rows and then set dates and metadata. And once that data is ready for reporting, we just switch our clone table with our production table. So this way, even though we're bringing data all day long, filling it, inserting it, we have zero downtime for our end users. The other really cool feature that we have implemented is with our incremental load. Our loads are not based on the time or last time that the flow ran. It is based on the absolute value that was inserted into our data warehouse. So what happens is that we keep track of when was the last time a value was inserted from a system, from a company, and what subject. So for example, company A, system B, subject client. This was the time that it was inserted. So we do our incremental loads as granular as possible. So in case if there is, the system is down, the source system is down, the data pipeline is not working, the data flow is not working, there doesn't need to be a intervention. Next time the flow is running, everything picks back up where it was left off. So over the past 4 months, we have had flows running all day long, and I can tell you we have spent less than a minute of on monitoring all the systems. And the last one was with third generation business intelligence tooling. So our goal is to not focus on reporting much. Our goal is mostly focusing on tracking the raw data sets, cleaning the raw data sets, seeing what are the sets that we need to build in order to be uh, having a complete set for analysts to actually run their analysis on. So no aggregation. Um, we're trying to make everybody to be a data analyst. Human mind is curious. I don't want to write a report for you and then you find something in it and you have to wait another 2 weeks for me to write a continuous report to see what that was. You should be able to slice and dice your reporting on the fly. And I think that was about it. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks so much, both to Darren and Misagh. Appreciate it. We have a few questions that have come in from the chat. You mentioned both Fivetran and Stitch. Do you have these both in place so that you're covering all your third-party sources?
Yes.
Okay.
So
yes,
I
please.
want to talk about that because that was something that we also were evaluating a lot. Um, I don't think it came since we are a really huge system. We have 100 sources to ingest data from. There are features in this that are not in that, but I would tell you this: it's not about vendor; it's about the approach. Whichever you go, make sure that you get yourself a data pipeline and go with the modern data stack rather than sticking to old traditional tooling.
Okay. And then what ultimately made you choose Trifacta over the competition?
Darren, you're mute.
How's that? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
So Trifacta was all about visibility. So one of the problems that we struggle with at many brands was communicating with the source of the data and helping them understand whether it was our inability to interpret or find commonality, consistency in the data. So by being able to pull up and present the data as we can through Trifacta, they can very quickly see the problem just as we do. And it sped up a process that's taken, honestly, months, and in some cases over a year to get to the bottom of a particular data. That it makes it transparent. You can see right through it and know, that this is either the problem we're dealing with, the inconsistency within that data, or this is how we're seeing it. This is what it's coming through as, and it just made the entire process. Well, I can say it a different way. Misagh has done in a couple of months what took us to largely, in fact, his data is cleaner than ours ever was. And that's because of Trifacta. There's no doubt in my mind it's because of that.
That's fantastic. Can either of you gentlemen expand on how the upfront costs and resources were minimal?
Darren can speak to that, but I can speak to my experience on the building previous systems. I don't know if 4 years ago it was possible to just sign up and have your own data warehouse engine in the cloud and pay as you go. So that required about 20, 30 grand upfront cost to get your Oracle SQL Server or your database engine columnar set up. Also, you had to have some sort of legacy ETL tooling, and that also came up with, hey, now you need a database engineer, you need an ETL developer, now you need a database administrator to see what's happening. And I do not believe what we did right now was possible 4 years ago. And let me remind you, this system was built with 2 resources. And in some cases, I can say 1.5 resources because my coworker had to be taking care of one-off requests and the old system.
Great. Was there more? Sorry.
So let me speak to your original question. All of the vendors were exceptionally helpful I mean, they saw our idea as novel and forward thinking. They saw the problem as large, and I'm sure they saw opportunity for themselves, but everyone wanted to be part of this solution. And every vendor has done two things for us. First was, there was obviously a very significant trial period that helped us get into the software, understand it, being able to use it, leverage it for what its strengths are. But the other thing that made a huge difference, this was very impactful from a cost perspective, is they let us import all historical data. So we require that we maintain data. Our preference is 2015. Our minimum is 2016 for all brands, for all of their data. They let us bring that in for free. And that was phenomenal. That was a really big help as it relates to, selecting vendors, storage, et cetera. That made a big deal to us. So that maybe, I think, speaks quite directly to your question about cost, how we were able to basically get into this the way we are.
Absolutely. Awesome. Does Trifacta leverage the Snowflake processing power for transformations?
So
that would definitely be a Misagh question.
So I know they're working on a direct connection to Snowflake, and it's going to be released soon. But yes, I have wrangled over, I don't know, some of my initial data flows to bring reservation from the brands that we onboard. I have wrangled over 20-30 million rows, transformed, extracted JSON files, unified, like a lot of different sources, and it was able to handle over 40, 50 million rows. And our billing, if it's about the cost of Trifacta and Snowflake, our billing for Trifacta, I don't know if it's much at all. It's that much that I don't even notice it.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of Trifacta, we want to thank them for sponsoring this session. They were the reason that Misagh and Darren were able to come and speak, and this was fantastic. We're getting a lot of interaction in the chat, so some good questions based off great content. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Next up, we have a panel of around data engineering and operations that begins at 1:30. So join us then. But for now, thank you to Darren and Misagh for being up, or being on the conference. And now take a second to watch one of this quick video from one of our sponsors, Trifacta.
Trifacta empowers everyone to prepare messy and diverse data faster. It's a data preparation platform built for the speed of modern business. With Trifacta, you can bring together more data faster, whether you need to prepare data for analytics, machine learning, or standard reporting. So what data do you need to wrangle? Get started with Trifacta today.